Hey, we're here to talk about one specific thing this weekend. And I'm thinking of it in this way, one relationship. There is one relationship that reflects this relationship that we can have with Jesus, and that's marriage. Jesus talks about the church, the bride, his bride, and we have in a relationship here on earth, in this situation, husband, wife, she's my bride. This is a direct reflection. And the closer we become with Jesus, the closer we become in our marriage. What a concept, right? It was almost like he intended this. But so that's what our desire is for you to capture tonight, is just understand that this one relationship is so important. And the more we reflect on our relationship with Jesus, the more we can improve and enhance our earthly marriage. So we've had plenty of things over the 21 years, almost 21 years that we've been married, things that we've encountered that have been challenging times, and some of them have been great times, but we have struggled with different areas, and one area of all places has been communication. Would you agree?
I agree. And you know what? I look at communication as probably one of the most important things that you got to have in your marriage, because if you're not communicating, you're just basically cohabitating, avoiding, and so I just look at communication as just so key.
Yeah.
And
do you remember some of those times when I'm like sitting there not communicating, right?
Right.
That you love that, don't you?
Oh, I just love that. And then I know you remember the times when we are communicating, and my intensity level can be a little bit more than what maybe is wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we found out is her intensity level shuts me down. Not intentionally, but because of where I came from and the things that I experienced, your intensity, it does a number on me. But we've navigated it. I mean, we've made a lot of improvements with it. But yeah, that's been a real struggle.
My intensity can be a good thing.
Yeah.
But it can also be a downfall too, because it makes you shut down. And that's where I feel like with communication is, so key. It's how you communicate with each other.
Right.
And how you basically dialogue back and forth. And one of the things that I found too is that we were playing a game with our children on communication.
Yes, this is good.
Yeah, we were playing a game, and one of the questions is what do you feel like your mom and dad need to improve on? And I'm like, oh wow.
Talk about transparency and vulnerability, right?
Like, okay, what are they gonna say? and actually it was in the form of communication. And when your children start noticing things, this is when it's a real eye-opener for you.
Yeah.
And so Josh, it was so funny, our son, who is 13, he says, Mom, and of course they use me first. Mom, you can be pretty intense when you communicate. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
So, okay, check number one, I need to maybe look at that, how I say things, right? And then he's like, Dad, they were thinking really a long time.
I think they didn't want to offend me.
Right, and I'm like, okay, but it's so easy for them to talk about their mother. But he was like, Dad, I just feel like that you could probably open up a little bit more with us all and talk a little bit more.
Yeah, bingo.
And say,
wow.
Yeah. So it's like, wow, we already knew those things.
Yeah.
But it's like, but when you hear your kids say it, it's like, wow, okay, an eye-opener. And like I said, my intensity can be a really good thing, and my positivity, and but it's just how I, sometimes when I get intense or triggered, that's when I get a little bit more direct and more vocal.
Yeah.
And
you know what? The quality of our communication really is, there's another piece to this. We have to make each other a priority. So priorities are important, and we can get in the busyness of life, and sometimes Steph can be distracted with things. I would say you're more distractible than I am in some cases. And if she gets distracted, then it's like, I may say something and then she may not hear it or know that I even said something. So that becomes clunky. And that's something we've learned throughout our time together, is that we have to make a priority and intentionality to listen to each other if we're going to be in a place of healthy communication. Maybe you can relate to this from a standpoint of just kind of missing the mark when it comes to communication. But so thoughts on priority there?
I would think, again, when it comes to my priorities, I think one of my gifts is that when I really am focused on something, I'm really focused on it, which is really good because I get things done. I got my list, I've got my things that I gotta do, and I'm gonna be very efficient, very effective in that. But then on the other hand, it can also be a downfall for me because when I put some other priorities over another, like marriage or family, or when I'm working on something, and when I get so focused on something, everything else kind of gets put on the back burner. And I think that, and our marriage is one of them at times. And so I don't know if you can relate with that. Sometimes when you get so busy, or even as a mom, you get busy and your priorities are your children.
Right.
And you know what? And then what happens to your marriage, right? It seems to sometimes get put on the back burner, or your husband, or in this case, yes, sometimes I do that. So anyway, so I would just say, I put things at a high priority and I'm really good at it and getting things done, very effective, very efficient. But then on the other hand, it can also be a downfall for me because I can put everything, maybe some of the most important things, on the back burner when really I need to keep first and foremost, besides God, my marriage and my family and those kind of things.
So we've got communication, we got priorities, and we've got revive or restore. Really lean into this, reviving our relationship. That's why we're here tonight. We want your relationship to leave differently tonight. We want it to be revived. And the way that we do that is being intentional in marriage. So we're excited that you're here, that you're ready, and we want to encourage you to be ready to just receive what is here this weekend for you.
So I think when you communicate in an effective way, when you keep your priorities in line, and I find that when I'm less intense in my communication with Bryan, I create more peace in the family. I create more of just a peaceful environment, and that's really what I truly desire, right? And I will say that sometimes even being brought up in a home, my home was intense. My home was a little bit more. We were more passionate, really excited about things, right? But then when that intensity level, the chaos came about, and it just created less peace in our household. But make sure first and foremost you communicate with your spouse, right? Or your family and your kids. I mean, our kids are at that place now where they want to communicate, but yet they don't want to communicate. They're hiding in their phones or whatever that it might be, because there's ways to avoid, right? And so it's really important to stay on track with that in communication, and then keeping your priorities in alignment. And I've always really been intentional about really trying to keep God first, and then my marriage second, and then my kids third, and then it goes my job. But again, sometimes it gets out of alignment. But when I keep that in the right order, that's when peace, and that's when things start becoming even more just, I don't know, special, more, in our closer in our family. Our family just becomes closer in a more of a dynamic way instead of taking apart.